right, so we're here with Mr. Leafman at Spot Coffee, and he's going to talk with us a little bit today about performance anxiety and things we can do as musicians to sort of battle that so we can perform with less side effects of stress and anxiety. So, how did you get into figuring out that this is something important to you, that it's something you wanted to sort of master?
So for me personally, when I was a sophomore doing my undergrad in New England Conservatory, I was taking summer festival auditions along with my colleagues. I was auditioning for festivals like the Music Academy of the West, Pacific Music Festival in Japan, and for the first time in my life, my hands started shaking while I was trying to play, especially soft snare drum, a lot of the things that require really fine motor skills and finesse and control. I was struggling with it. And I'd made it through my college auditions, other concerts, senior recital in high school, things like that, without having any of these problems, and all of a sudden, it was becoming a consistent problem. I was walking into these audition rooms with Ted Atkatz for Music Academy of the West, Dave Herbert for Pacific Music Festival, and I was having trouble performing at my best. So I knew that this was something that I was going to have to start to figure out. And so I began talking with my teacher, Dan Bausch, about some resources for this kind of stuff. And he did his undergrad at the Juilliard School, where they have two significant mental toughness professors there. They have Don Green, who's kind of the original proprietor of mental toughness for musicians. He wrote two really significant books, Performance Success and Audition Success, working with bass players from the Rochester Philharmonic, vocalists in the Syracuse area, a lot of other kinds of performers and musicians. And then a direct descendant of Don Green, Noah Kageyama, who studied with Don Green at Juilliard and kind of branched off and did his own thing through what he calls the Bulletproof Musician, which is an online website and blog that he has. So I got the Don Green books. I started following Dr. Kageyama's blog. He actually came to New England Conservatory and did a lecture, so I was able to meet him in person. And through these resources, I kind of started getting turned on to the things that we needed to be doing. And this is, fortunately, something that's starting to be talked about a lot more in the last 20 years. But I still think it's something that we need to talk about even more. Because it's something that everyone faces, whether or not they feel comfortable talking about it or not. This is something that everyone can relate to in one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking earlier, and you were bringing up the fact that a lot of professional sports athletes and Olympic athletes are having mental coaches to help them through this. So what are the specific things that you took from all of these books and the blogs and the people you've met and the research you've done? What do you do now to prepare differently or on audition day that seem to help you the most when you're going through that process?
Yeah, so it's tough for musicians because, like you just said, these athletes, in addition to having a physical trainer, have a designated mental toughness coach. So the thing that I took away, first of all, is that I needed to be that for myself as much as I was being my own teacher in the practice room. So some of the skills that I developed was trying to get my heart rate under control. So for a lot of people, when they go into auditions, there are two different kinds of reactions. There are the people that get really, really amped up and need to kind of bring themselves down. And then there are the people that kind of need to psych themselves up, that kind of have a hard time getting ready to go for an audition. So I'm definitely the kind of person, on audition day, my adrenal glands are pumping, my heart rate is up. So one of the tips and tricks that I learned from the principal horn player of the Colorado Philharmonic, Mike Thornton, is to actually run with a heart rate monitor. And I enjoy running a lot, so I was already running. And so I bought a heart rate monitor, and I could track my heart rate. So I would go running, I'd be watching my heart rate, and then I would start doing breathing exercises while I was running and see if I could physically lower my heart rate with this monitor going and see the actual results. Very controlled breathing. So that's one thing that I do a lot. Another thing that's really popular on audition day, for example, a lot of people have notes that they write to each other to kind of remind themselves, like, hey, you worked hard, you put in the time and effort, you are ready to do this, and you're going to do great. Have that either in your stick bag, if you're play a different instrument in your case right before you go on stage, something to read to yourself. Another thing people like to include in that letter, and something that I like to remember, is that the people sitting behind the screen who are sitting in front of you, if it's a college audition, the faculty members, whoever they are, they want you to do well. When you walk into the audition room, they're looking for the guy, and from the moment you walk in, they're hoping that you are that guy or that girl who they're going to want to work with, who they're going to want to hire, admit to their school, whatever it is. So remembering first and foremost to come into an audition with that in mind, I think has been really pivotal for me. And then another big thing for me, since I do like physical activity so much, is I do a lot of yoga, and I've also started doing a little bit of Tai Chi as well. This is something that I think more people should just do on a regular basis. Yoga has become such an accessible thing in the last couple of years. There are YouTube videos for you to do just yoga routines and things like that. So to establish, again, doing a lot of breathing work through yoga, stretching for me to avoid performance injuries, which is really important as well, to kind of just get focused and really realize the control that we have over our mind. Because I think that's what it ultimately comes down to, is being able to bring your mind under control. Because when you have your adrenaline pumping and everything like that, it's your brain that's sending out those signals. So if you can have the resources like meditation, like yoga, have a note to yourself to kind of be able to bring yourself down, if that's the kind of performance anxiety that you have, those are some really key things, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you brought up the yoga and the Tai Chi. Those things have been proven to kind of seep into your everyday sort of persona. So doing that totally separate of the practice room is something that you can kind of turn on that switch when it's needed. So I think that's a nice thing to kind of mix in there.
Yeah.
So what specifically, if you could give maybe a 30-second breakdown of what you do for your breathing exercise,
sure,
to get that heart rate down.
Yeah, so for me, it's all about controlled breathing, right? So it's doing 5 breaths in, 5 breaths hold, 10 out. Sorry. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds hold, 10-second exhale. So it's really important, especially if you're trying to slow down the heart rate, to have a longer exhale than inhale. Another thing I like to do is I do these exercises with my eyes closed, and I do visualization as I'm doing this breathing. For me, I try and keep it really simple. My mind can get really active sometimes, and that can distract me from the breathing exercises that I'm doing. So I just like to often just imagine the color blue. For me, that's a really peaceful color. It's something nice and easy, so I close my eyes. I think of the ocean, just the color, anything like that, and I do these measured breathing exercises so that when I'm behind the screen in the audition and I'm about to play, I do a short, measured breath, I hold, I do a longer exhale. It might not be 5, 5, 10, it might be something a little shorter, but it's just establishing that routine so that when you're in the moment, your body's used to it and you can immediately just get that heart rate down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so listening to you talk, it sounds a lot like going through an audition process is really a lifestyle.
Right, it absolutely
If you want to be successful, it's not really just about knowing the music, playing the music well consistently, but knowing yourself better, knowing how your body's going to respond in different situations, and living life differently.
Right. There are 2 different ways some of the great mentors and teachers that we have for percussion approach auditions. There's kind of a school of thought where you should only take an audition if you're ready to go, if you're ready to win. But there's also the school of thought that taking auditions is a practice, just like we practice our instruments every day. And that's the school of thought that I come from. And that's what I've experienced just in my own life. So I really do think that taking auditions is a process, and exactly like you said, a lifestyle where you need to learn how your body reacts under these situations. And doing mock auditions and everything like that is so important, but you cannot totally replicate taking an audition unless you take auditions. So absolutely. I think it's something that everyone should be doing and approaching from that mentality. I'm sure you were the same way you are the same way now, that it's hard to get out of the practice room. I have a hard time getting myself to leave the practice room. I think that every minute I can spare should be in the practice room. But I've learned, and especially recently as I've taken more and more auditions, that when you get to a certain point when you don't need to rep Porgy over and over again. You don't need to play Porgy from 60 beats per minute all the way up to 126 beats per minute again. You've done it for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. The things that could be more productive with your time are things outside of the practice room, like yoga, like these other things we're talking about.
Right, yeah, once you get on that brink of over-practicing, you're almost making it more stressful. Right. You're building the stress by practicing. Right. Every little mistake, everything can really build up. So get out of the practice room. Is that a good
That's a good piece of advice.
Get out of the practice room.
You'll be a much happier person all around because of it, I think.
Yeah.
Another thing you said that I really like, and this is something that Will Hudgens of the Boston Symphony says, is that almost anyone can hit the notes and rhythms these days. You know, it's so much more when you're in the audition room, when you're playing for people. To bring something else to the table is what really makes a player shine these days, because there are so many great players out there, you know? So to keep these things in mind and make it as important as your practice, I think, is a significant step towards having more success in auditions.
Yeah, we might be straying off topic a little bit, and I know we're battling with the coffee grinder again, but would you say from your experience that your personality playing a role in how you play can also have an effect on the kind of gig you win? I know, for example, I had a very heavy rudimental drumming background very early on in my development, and that kind of stuck with me, which kind of was part of my thought process. So when I was auditioning, I was always auditioning for the military bands, because that was a more important component than it would be for, say, an orchestra. And it kind of, was a way to tap into my personality and my playing. Do you see that the people that win the gigs are winning the gigs that kind of match who they are as a person and a player?
I do see that. I think that's absolutely true. And it's so funny because I've never taken a military band audition, because I made a decision early on in my life that I really loved doing the orchestra thing. And for military band, you need the traditional grip, which I don't really have the chops for, and you also need a lot of drum set skills, which I used to do a lot of drum set playing and ended up letting go because it's much less common on orchestra auditions. It's showing up more now, I think, as orchestras are beginning to do more pop stuff, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But that's been disadvantageous for me, especially when it comes to military band auditions. So my personality of maybe being a little more reserved might fit better in the back of an orchestra rather than doing a ceremonial band or something like that. And it totally depends on your background. So that's something that, like my rudimental chops, for example, I've had to bring up, especially for school auditions, where a lot of schools, universities, conservatories require both a classical solo and a rudimental style solo.
Right.
So that's something I've worked on a lot, maybe the opposite for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I thought we can connect it by saying maybe, I don't know anymore, I lost it. But there is a connection there as to why, I think through doing these things like Tai Chi and yoga or meditation and finding out more about ourselves, we find out more about who we are as a player.
Right. Absolutely.
So, awesome. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just want to say another one of my biggest takeaways from these things is just the need to be patient with yourself. Well, a lot of people, myself included, when you first start meditation, when you first start yoga, these aren't things that necessarily come naturally. Maybe for some people it is, and some people can really just dive into it. But the more people I've talked to about these kinds of things, I've heard so many people say, oh, I don't like meditation, or oh, I don't like yoga, I tried it once or twice. But trying it once or twice, first of all, I think going into an audition room, for most people, is an uncomfortable situation. So the more we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations in our life and persevere through those things, I think that's another way we can build on our ability to be good audition takers, or at least more comfortable in the audition room and not necessarily feel all the effects of our performance anxiety in the moment. So I would just urge people to really explore, especially with things like yoga and meditation, where there are so many different styles. There are so many different realms you can dive into and kind of touch upon until you find something that really works for you. A lot of people advocate these kinds of things, and I think we have the ability to, because there are so many different ways to do meditation or yoga or Tai Chi or any of these different things. It's bound to work for 99% of people, I would have to say.
Right. Well, thanks again for taking some time to chat with us.
Absolutely.
I think
Pleasure to be here.
some great stuff, and hopefully some people take away something from it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, great.